Good morning everyone, today we're checking out a brand new video from Popcross Studios, a moment I'll never forget, Starseed Psyche, episode 13. And from what we could tell of the thumbnail, even though we can't see it right now, is that this is the episode where we'll finally figure out which of the women in his life are his love and his rival. Let's hop in and finally get our answers. I've been waiting for this.
Previously, on Starseed Psyche, Kyodachi was transported into the base of an alien race called the Repsoros, who have been living on Earth in secret for thousands of years. He appeared there with fellow Super 8th soldier and fellow Starseed, Toshiko Yamada, along with Phaestriel, a Cusidian trying to help discover who created the Q-Serax drones attacking humanity, and Chip Akali, Kaio's closest friend, who it turns out is a Repsoro, who erased his memories before being turned into a human to live out a new life. The first people they came across in the...
Yeah, we literally have all three of them. It's so awesome. We got a Superite, we got a Repsoros, and we got a Cusidian. And an actual Cusidian as well.
The space were Tarbus, a Repsoro with many mechanical limbs and augmentations, and Dr. Anastasia Shatya. She was Chip's mother before he erased his memories and became a human, partially having done so that he...
Well, I mean, even when the Chip did become a human, she was still his mother. Just had to put on a disguise for it.
Could forget her specifically, as he wanted a relationship with his mother, but she had not been willing to make the time for that. Kaio had thought the Repsoros were the ones most likely behind the Q-Serax attacks, and in the heat of the moment upon arriving, he made that very clear, only to have Dr. Shatya humble him by reminding him that, just like there are humans who do very good things and those who do very bad things, Repsoros are the same, and many of them are genuinely good. Phaestriel stepped in and took the blame for Kaio not having a more level-headed opinion about the Repsoros, as she's the one who told him about them, and all the tension was diminished enough for a conversation to be had with Dr. Shatya
Micro-racism.
and Tarbus about who may really be behind the Q-Serax attacks. On top of being a brilliant Repsoro inventor, Shatya lives her life as a human who creates weapons and technology, like the Tekagami claws, for the Japanese military. She told Kaio and his allies that she suspects the Q-Serax were actually made by humans. Let's find out her justification for this in the next chapter of Starseed Psyche.
What if it's humans and bad Repsorians working together?
Dr. Shatya's words lingered in the air. Humans making the Q-Serax? It both seemed impossible and yet felt way too possible after hearing it said out loud. Toshiko was the first to break the silence.
I mean, dude, no, nothing is impossible when you yourself are literally an alien reborn in the human flesh just to, what, dance? I don't actually even know. Your reason for rebirth.
You think it may be military officials trying to push weapons technology forward?
Most likely.
Shatya nodded. That is likely a part of this if I am correct, but not simply weapons. In the process of innovating in one field, you will often discover revelations that benefit others as well.
Oh, that is true.
Discoveries made during the creation of the atom bomb resulted in massive leaps being made in the medical industry and in cancer treatment. When humanity gets desperate in times of war, bigger risks are approved to be taken and more discoveries are likely to be made. It was only after the last Q-Serax attack, in which many Super 8th soldiers were killed and injured, that we were given approval to start implementing field tests of the Tekagami claws. I had done some of my own, she said, nodding her head towards Tarbus, who was still leaning against the wall of the drab room, drumming his mechanical fingers. But I had not been able to see how the claw technology fares when used by natural...
I'm actually kind of wondering about the Tekagami equipment. Like, is it something that's put over the arm permanently, like a permanent glove or gauntlet, or is it something that completely replaces the limb? And I mean that more so for like the humans, who are probably much smaller than the Repsorians, who are probably bigger and would have it be more like the first option.
Born humans in the field on a long-term basis. If these attacks are being orchestrated by humans, it would make sense that those humans would scale the level of the threat to force the hand of those in charge. If the Tekagami Claw technology works, as I am frankly certain it will once any bugs are ironed out, it will revolutionize the medical field and earn billions for those with investments in it, such as Chief of Staff Shiji Kaburu. And yes, I will earn a very large sum from this as well, but I am already very well compensated by both humans and Rep Soros. So don't think this is me pushing the war agenda to become rich, human.
It ain't about money.
She snarled at me. I raised my hands. What? I get it, okay? You were right. I was being a lizard racist, or whatever you want to call it. I'm cool, so can you back off me already? Yes, you no longer sound defensive at all, she muttered. How do you not get how hypocritical that is to say after you...
Never mind.
I stopped myself mid-sentence, realizing I was getting riled up again, like the old me might have. Faye wouldn't react like this. I looked over at her and she just had a soft, gentle, supportive smile on her face, as if to say, it's okay. Even that got me kind of annoyed. The way I was narrating her in my head, it's like she was treating me like I was a child. Even though part of me knew that was just me inventing an idea of what she was thinking based on my own insecurities. That's
true.
The kind of thing that's easier for me to see now looking back than it was to see in the moment. I just leaned back in my seat and said, sorry, go on. The Chief of Staff is part of a global commission made up of other military leaders, world leaders, and a few random billionaires with too much time on their hands. This is not widely
random billionaires
known, but is also not exactly a secret. They made up the majority of people who are allowed to meet with the Cusidians, prior to them revealing their existence to humanity a few years ago. Their plans and conversations, however, are incredibly well-protected secrets. What I say next you cannot breathe a word of anywhere it may be heard by military officials. I only know this as Buru's most trusted inventor. He has mentioned on multiple occasions the Commission's interest in rapidly progressing our flight and space exploration technology. He has even hinted that this is something I should prepare for us to begin working further on next. I have some spacecraft technology in the works, but we have not had the funding to move forward with it as of yet. If my theory is correct, then presumably the next Q-Serax attack will be made from off-world, likely in the exosphere or farther out in space around the planet. This would force funding to be approved so that we could fight back more effectively.
Logically, that makes sense.
This seemed like the best lead we'd had. But then Toshiko cut in with a question that should have crossed my mind earlier. The significant gap in this theory is if the hypothetical humans orchestrating these attacks have technology as impressive as the Q-Serax themselves, why bother going through this whole process? The Q-Serax ships are already space-ready. The weapons the Q-Serax use are nearly as impressive as the Super-8 gauntlets.
That is true.
Shotzi rapped her knuckle on the table twice, then pointed at Toshiko. That is the billion-dollar question. The Q-Serax technology could certainly not have been built by humans at this stage. While I have not been able to study it up close, it does appear to be very similar to Cusidian technology, though that could simply be a deception. Spacecraft of this caliber and technology that disintegrates upon ceasing its function is not particularly uncommon in more technologically advanced species, but humanity certainly has not reached this point yet, at least no humans I have come across. If they had reached this level, there would be no need to force a war. When Cusidians returned to Earth this most recent time, they were attempting to share their technology with humanity. But even I was never able to replicate any of this. If Boru had permitted me to meet directly with Cusidian inventors, I likely could have had better results. But the irksome commission was very picky about who actually got to meet with them. They showed me videos and relayed information the Cusidians shared about their technology, but it largely came across as total nonsense to me. Relying on the soul's energetic field to power the blah 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 was all useless. No offense, Cusidian. Faye smiled. None taken. So, if I understand correctly, for your theory about humans being behind the Q-Serax in order to progress human...
So, hold on. Is all Super-8 equipment just soul-powered stuff?
...humanity's technology to be correct, humans would have needed to gain access to the technology behind the Q-Serax, but not actually understand how to build it themselves. Therefore, they'd use the drones and technology to attack the Earth, then force human technology to progress in order to fight back. Shotya nodded. Essentially, yes. Yeah. But, hey, that's just a theory. I could very well be incorrect. Ultimately, my job is not to discover the truth. It is to build the weapons that humanity fights back with. She then noticed Chip's face looking mildly disappointed with her, which, by the standards of how Chip usually looked, may as well have been him steaming from the ears and seething with rage. She continued. But if there is anything I can do to help discover the truth, as I imagine you are all very inclined to do, you can contact me with more questions, and I can keep you updated on anything I learn myself.
I say we just let it keep going.
That could be useful.
Tarbus snarled.
It's the most interesting thing that's happened to humanity in decades.
Chip chuckled slightly. You trying to give off supervillain vibes there, bucko? He grinned and licked his teeth.
Maybe. You gonna come at me if I am? I'll thump you like I used to in school, cheekavore.
School, huh? So, you ain't my dad, then. I was thinking that might have been the implication here.
Yeah, no, we kind of all thought that. And it's like, so on, if you're my mom, is that guy my dad? And no, wait, he just talking about school? No, he's a class... Are you around my age? You do not look it. Damn, man.
He stomped forward.
Snark it, I don't look anywhere near old enough to be your dad.
Chip shrugged.
I don't know what aging looks like for lizard people. Didn't mean to hurt your feelings there.
Yeah.
He slammed a metal fist on the table.
Like you could hurt my feelings if you tried.
Down,
Dude, he literally hurt your feelings without even trying or meaning to.
Tarbus, Shotya said, patting his metal hand. We are trying to be positive representatives of our people here, remember? Now please, go ensure the platform is ready to return Chikavor and his friends to their previous location when we are finished. He grabbed...
I think it would have been better if C called him Chip, because, you know, he isn't Chikavor anymore, he's Chip.
Howled.
Yeah, sorry, Stasi. I'm on it.
Theastriel stood up. Excuse me, but would it be possible for me to accompany you? I do not mean to impose, but I would love to see more of Repzoro technology up close and in person. I came to Earth with a fascination for humans, but never expected to get an opportunity to see a Repzoro community for myself.
Even I would agree with that.
Tarbus glanced at Shotya. She shrugged. Don't let anyone attack her. Tarbus rolled his eyes and nodded for Faye to follow. She leapt up excitedly. She grazed her hand along my back as she passed. I'll return soon. They left together, and we spent another 15 minutes or so talking with Dr. Shotya, bouncing different ideas and theories off her about the Q-Seracs. It was mostly Toshiko doing the talking on our side. Some of the military tactics and terminology she was referencing went right over my head. It sounded like Toshiko had never been a big fan of Shijikaburu, and she wasn't at all surprised that he could be part of the problem. When their back and forth slowed to a stop, Chip finally spoke up.
Hey, Kaio, Ms. Yamada, any chance y'all could give me a couple minutes alone with Dr. Shotya?
I didn't know what he planned to say, but without hesitation I got up, nodding. Shotya seemed more concerned than Toshiko or I. The doctor led us into a room across the hall, similar to the one we'd just been chatting in, but a bit smaller, just to ensure we weren't left out in the open for every Repzoro in the base to see and potentially feel threatened by.
Yeah, that
I'd
been
been thinking
bad.
so much about what Chip was going to do that I hadn't even processed that I was alone with Toshiko.
Huh. Who's this guy? Oh, this is the guy that they're thinking and is the main lead behind all the Q-Serac stuff. Okay.
Not exactly how I expected my evening to go, she joked. I chuckled awkwardly. She sat on the desk in the room, fidgeting with the small Super 8th gauntlet we'd brought. Toshiko asked,
It was just a
You might
prototype
know
one,
better
wasn't
than
it?
I do, but do Q-Sidians have some kind of supernatural being chill and relaxed all the time powers? Because Faye seems like you could chop her arm off and she'd forgive you before it even hit the floor. That time I gave him
Oh, I could totally see that. And yes, this is the part. This is where it happens. Yes!
Genuine laugh. Yeah, right? It's like impressive in almost an annoying way. I feel like I acted like a total jerk compared to her through this whole thing. Toshiko shook her head. You responded perfectly understandably for how confusing and stressful of a situation it was.
Yeah,
I think
lack of knowledge.
all of us looked bad compared to her. Maybe not Chip. He was surprisingly calm about this. Unless he snapped in there and is strangling Shotzi right now.
Oh,
I
that
shook
would
my
be bad.
head. Honestly, knowing Chip, he's probably comforting her right now or something.
I mean, most likely, even though he doesn't remember it, that is still his mother.
My mind suddenly fell back on the moment where Toshiko had been crying after hearing Chip's heartbreaking final message to his mother before wiping his memories. I moved slowly over to her and leaned against the table beside her. Hey, are you okay? I mean, I know Chip's old self's final message thing was completely heartbreaking, but I don't know. I don't want to put thoughts in your head, but I know you have some issues with your mom. She sighed and
You're
drummed her
just
fingers
talking,
on the table for a
asking.
moment before
That's fine.
speaking. I just. I don't know what to think about Ritsu. How invested am I supposed to be in my relationship with her? I mean, I don't remember my old parents as a Tsuberite, but I know I had some. I know I chose to be Ritsu's daughter, but was that just a means to an end? She is a really impressive person, but she can also be infuriating, especially now knowing that her whole always follow the authority above you mentality is forcing her to follow someone who may very well be behind the invaders we're fighting.
That is true. And of course, you are bringing up one of the main topics. Thanks. How do you love a pound when that pound is also causing harm? And in your case, it's even more because this is your second life. The only thing I could suggest is just love her when you can and try to help her when she needs it, even if she says no.
I like the idea of having a better relationship with her, but how much effort is it really worth putting in when I have so many other things I want to do in this life? It's just confusing. I started thinking up tons of inspiring things I could say, but before I could let any out, they all just came across in my head as things I wanted to say to sound impressive and inspiring, not actually things that would help her. Instead, I said,
That is trouble.
well, I can give you comfort and sympathy, but if you need advice, Faye might be a better person to talk to about that, since she seems like she always knows the right thing to say.
Yeah, I could see that.
Toshiko turned and looked me in the eyes with a surprisingly grateful expression. I think I'd rather just have comfort from you anyway. My heart started thudding as I slowly reached an arm around her shoulder. I definitely
Yes.
hover-handed a second too long, but did finally get the nerve to set my arm down. As soon as I did, she relaxed even more than I realized she was capable of, and lay her head against me. I realized her head was super close to my heart, and I knew she could feel it pounding,
Oh,
which
yeah,
obviously
she can
just
hear
made
it.
it pound even harder. A sound quietly rumbled in her throat, then came again, and I realized...
So you can probably just hear it going. But you could also just chalk it up to nerves of everything that just happened, instead of let them know it's the moment.
She was
Oh,
trying
you
to
know what, I'm just
conceal a
teasing,
laugh
man.
at my thudding heart. I groaned. I know, I'm trying to stop it. She burst out laughing. It's fine, I
It's biological.
didn't think I'd make you that nervous. Well, yeah, it's not exactly every day that a brilliant, gorgeous Starseed inventor willingly presses part of her body up against me. The second I said that, I felt my face going beet red.
Oh,
She
yeah.
raised her arm and pressed her hand gently onto my chest, right over my thumping heart. Speaking intentionally quietly and sweetly, she said, "Does this help?" I felt my breathing quicken and just laughed awkwardly again. Obviously not. That's so much worse. She laughed and pulled herself away. All right, sorry. Oh, I muttered. I didn't mean that I wanted you to
I didn't
stop.
say pull away.
I saw excitement flash across her face as she said,
Yes.
"Okay, good." She leaned against me, putting her hand on my chest once more. My heart was still pounding at first, but I leaned my own head against hers, and
Yes.
slowly the
Yes.
thudding reduced. Soon it was as if I could feel both our hearts beating in sync. I didn't know how long we stayed like that, but no length of time could have been enough. Eventually, still resting against me, Toshiko said, "I think we can both get to a point where we're as calm under pressure as Phaestriel. Subraith training has already helped us a lot in that field."
It
I
indeed
nodded
has.
gently, still leaning against her. "Yeah, I think so too. I mean, not that today was a great example of where I'm at now, but if you knew me a year ago, there's no way that version of me would have been any good at comforting you,
Oh,
or been able
hands
to handle
down.
anything that happened today." You can change...
Dude, do you, from a year ago, when meeting a Repsarian, would just start slinging out all the slurs you could, and everything you could call them, from an alien to a lizard to an egg sucker. I don't know if that actually means anything, I just threw it out.
Change a lot in even just a year when you decide you have to. She leaned off me again and asked, "Speaking of a year ago, I read your file, you know, when I suspected you were a Starseed like me. I wanted to see if there was any more evidence of that. This will sound a bit arrogant if I'm wrong, but you said to my mother that you'd seen a Subwraith soldier in action during the first Q-Serax attacks. You also specified that she was absolutely incredible. If I'm remembering the documented conversation correctly."
Oh?
I smiled. "Yep, that's totally true. And on that note, do you by chance remember coming across some shabby-dressed guy with hair kinda like mine running for his life that you may have saved from getting blasted full of holes by a Q-Serax?"
Oh, yes.
She gripped my leg surprisingly tightly. "That actually was you? You looked so different. I thought in the chaos I messed up and let a building fall on you." I chuckled. "Well, technically that did kind of happen, yeah, but I lived. And I've gone through a lot of changes since then."
Oh,
In
yeah.
fact, that night kind of changed my entire life. My heart was
Because it was the night you met Yorick.
pounding again.
This
I
been a
knew what
guy.
I wanted to say next, but was it the right thing? I still didn't know if Toshiko was the love of my life or not, but I had spent the better part of a year thinking she was, and now that just felt so right. Because of that, I decided to just go for it. I said, "I finally started taking charge of my life after that. I used to be a really angry guy, and I guess there is still some of that in me, but
Remnants.
I found Argent Angelo's book after that, met Chip, started getting in shape, and knew I wanted to join the Subwraith Squadron." And
That's right.
honestly, the whole time I was doing all that training, I hoped, once I became good enough, I'd get a chance to meet the incredible soldier who... The door suddenly swung open, and I wanted to hurl a chair at the person who opened it, until I saw that it was Faye standing there.
Uh-oh.
I think Toshiko must have given Faye an equally irritated look, because the smiling Q-Sidian said, "Oh, I'm sorry, would you like me to return later?" Neither of us answered, but I think we both wanted
Damn it, Fayestriel!
to say yes. Faye being the one to interrupt us at that exact moment got me worried. Was that some kind of sign? Was I not supposed to be into Toshiko? Was Faye really supposed to be the love of my life?
Dude, I don't know!
A few seconds after Faye came in, the door across the hall opened. Dr. Shotsia stepped out of the room with tear-stained cheeks and puffy eyes. Chip came out behind her, and he looked perfectly fine. You'd never have guessed that he just learned that he was a lizard person with a childhood so depressing that he erased his memories to start a new life. He put a hand on her shoulder, and she gave him a big hug, and was clearly holding back more tears. Tarbus leaned against the wall next to Faye and snarled. Faye put a gentle hand on his shoulder, then quietly said, "Remember, Tarbus, her caring about him doesn't limit the feelings she may have for you." He took a breath and nodded. Right, got it, Faye."
So Tarbus is like some kind of pseudo-son then. Not a son replacement, because, you know, Chip is still alive and everything, and now he's technically back in her life. He's more like Chip's adopted brother, in a way, would be thinking it.
Never really got the whole story of what happened there, but it didn't surprise me to imagine Faye giving Tarbus some kind of therapy session in their brief chat together. Soon after that, we were all led back to the room and the metal platform where we'd first arrived. Repsoro teleportation isn't something they can just do constantly, but after a charging period, Shotsia was able to send us back to Faye's ship, since it's where we'd been transported from. We thanked Shotsia for her help and information, and after her chat with Chip, she more emphatically asserted her willingness to help us figure out the truth behind the Q-Serax. About 2 hours after being zapped away, we arrived back in Faye's ship. We were all blinded at first, as we had been before, but as our eyes were clearing, I asked, "Well, that was pretty wild. How are you feeling, Chip?"
Yeah, how's everyone feeling?
I wanted to ask what he'd said to Shotsia, but didn't want to push him to talk about it if he didn't want to. Luckily, he was happy to elaborate.
Oh, okay.
I told her there was no need to feel bad. Like I said, I reckon that version of me we saw ain't really me. I mean, I believe it was, but
Was. That's the key word. Was. It's not you now. Oh, was.
real different now. She couldn't control the fact that she didn't care about me, and now I've found people who genuinely do, without forcing it. And I reckon that old version of me wasn't really a fan of himself. I think the reason I was able to bring good folks into my life is because I got myself to a point where I like me. That means other people liking me is bonus and not a necessity.
Boom.
Funny enough, that kind of takes a lot of pressure off folks who might like you, and that makes them like you even more because they don't need to be even more because they don't need to be nothing for you. They don't need to convince you that you're likable because you already know you are.
Yeah.
I was floored by his maturity. I couldn't really picture Chip chewing someone out, but it would have been totally understandable if he'd called Shotzi out for not being a better mom. Instead, it sounded like he just helped her let go of the guilt she was harboring around the whole ordeal.
Definitely.
Faye bounced on the ends of her hooves as she said,
"That is a beautiful way to look at this experience, Chip and Saul, and having Dr. Shotzi as an eager and willing ally could be hugely helpful to us. Your maturity may not have only helped stabilize some difficult emotions in yourself and Dr. Shotzi, but may even help us save this world."
Chip chuckled. Perfect.
"Well, that might be higher praise than I deserve, but I appreciate the compliment, Ms. Fayastriel." Faye and Chip were making eyes at each other, but he clearly thought about my little handshake situation and jerked his eyes away to look at me sort of apologetically. Was Chip into Faye? Part of me actually liked that idea, but what about Faye interrupting at the exact moment I was about to pour my heart out to Toshiko?
Dude, at this point, we're never gonna find out. This is gonna be like the Detono's Magic Should Be Special. Well, at the spoilers for anyone that has not read and the manhwa or seen the anime. Spoilers again. And like at the end, how we don't figure out which of the girls he gets with. Does he get with his Princess Asris or Romantica? Like, we don't find out which one. Both of them are so good for him, but we don't figure it out. It's literally left open ending for anyone to just make whatever they want. Sorry.
Was that not a sign? It sure seemed like one. Faye gave us all hugs before sending us back down to the ground. As always, embracing her made all of my concerns in the world ever so briefly melt out of existence. Did that mean something?
Dude,
I didn't know what I was supposed to think, so I just tried to let it go and embrace the confusion. If I was supposed to understand what was going on, I tried to trust that I just would. The three of us transported back to the ground to head back towards the compound. We all needed to get some sleep before training the next day, and for our upcoming Q-Serax base invasion. That would hopefully provide an opportunity to look for more evidence of humans being behind the Q-Serax. When we were only a few paces into our walk, Toshiko...
like imagine that they actually go to the base right in, it's just like, this is a ham and cheese sandwich. Was someone eating lunch when you raided? Well, of course, because I'm holding a ham and cheese sandwich.
Looked down at her feet, surprisingly confused. My boot is unlaced. Give me a second. She knelt down and Chip shot his eyes over to me. A slight smirk crossed his face. You know what? In all the craziness, I sort of slipped on the fact that I gotta hit the loo pretty fierce. Mind if I run on ahead? Toshiko tried to hide her eagerness as she said,
"No problem, go ahead."
Chip said goodnight, gave me a sly nod, then basically sprinted away from us. When he was out of earshot, Toshiko finished lacing and stood up. I wasn't sure how I was supposed to feel about Toshiko, but tried to just be there. I was genuinely excited to have time alone with her again. She chuckled, then said something that probably seemed like nothing to her, but struck me like a ton of bricks. With how Chip reacted to Dr. Shotzi, he might make just as good of an emotional maturity rival for us as Fayastriel. I nearly...
That's what she is! Oh, an emotional rival! Not a rival you fight. But one that helps you train! Yes!
Burst out laughing in shock, confusion, and excitement all at once. I muttered, rival? She didn't know what that word meant to me and just shrugged. Well, maybe rival is too strong a word, but trying to keep up with Faye emotional maturity-wise is probably going to be a fun challenge and make us better people in the process. It felt like Toshiko had just snapped the final piece of a puzzle into place. An emotional maturity rival.
We got it!
That's exactly what Fayastriel was.
Yes!
Toshiko was clearly a bit confused by my slack-jawed response, but she couldn't hold back her question.
What was it you were saying back in the room before we were interrupted? Something about your training and about me?
I just laughed and grinned like a crazy person with my body practically shaking. If Faye was my rival, well, I knew exactly what else that meant. I said,
yes.
Right, I think You know what? I have a good way to summarize what I was saying. I stepped right up to her, wrapped one arm around her waist, and put the other firmly behind her head. I paused ever so briefly to see if she'd want to pull away or stop me. She didn't.
Yes.
In fact, before I was even ready to lean in farther, she wrapped herself around me, thrust her head forward, and pressed her lips firmly against mine.
Yes!
Time ceased to exist, as did the space around us, and every single sense I had, except for the feeling of her body embracing mine.
Finally!
Every part of my touch was elevated beyond anything I'd experienced. No pain or pleasure had ever made me feel anything this wholly and completely. Her hair through my fingers was soft and airy, like it was floating off into space beyond my grasp. Our arms melted into each other's backs. Her stomach and chest pressed against mine made me simultaneously relaxed and excited. I hadn't kissed many women before that moment, but even still, her lips convinced me that I'd never truly and genuinely kissed anyone else at all. It was as if my lips had been waiting for her before they would fully allow my nerves to experience what a kiss was really meant to feel like.
Finally!
I still didn't know who the love of my life was supposed to be, but I knew in that moment who I wanted it to be. Maybe that was all that really mattered.
Hell yeah. I bet Yonix over in the spirit realm with the balloons, body stream was a noisemaker, just going crazy, throwing confetti everywhere, cause he finally got his boy.
So that moment was originally gonna happen a couple chapters from now, but once I got into the flow of writing this episode and just thinking about how heartbreaking the last episode was, I was just like, no, we're getting to this plot point now. And I think it's going to work out better this way anyway. Anyway, besides that, that's all for today, except of course for ending this video on some kind of positive or inspiring note. And today's message is kind of something that has really sunk in for me in the last couple weeks, which is, if you spend a lot of time worrying about whether other people think you're a good person, which is definitely something I used to do a lot, and even up until recently did a fair amount, what's most likely actually going on is subconsciously you're not convinced that you're a good person. Maybe consciously you think you are, but subconsciously that hasn't really set in. And when you get to a point where that does kind of click on a subconscious level that yes, you are a good person, which might only come after years of doing a lot of internal work on yourself, you start to become way less concerned about what other people think of you because you realize that they're viewing you through the lens of their own insecurities and their own worldviews, which don't necessarily line up with your own. So I guess the sort of advice here is to not spend so much time trying to convince other people that you're a good person. Just do your best to actually be what your idea of a good person is, and trust that people who resonate with you will see that eventually. I hope that's inspiring. I love you all, and I'll see you all in the next episode on Friday. Goodbye.
Alright everyone, that's going to be the end of today's video, and I hope you all enjoyed this. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Link to the original will be in the description below, and I'll see all of y'all next time when we flick back on. Till then, this is Fox, signing out. Peace.